To all Zoom attendees, don't worry, your mics and cameras are disabled. If you wish to make a comment, click on chat at the bottom left. Tell us where you are from and how do you find the topic. If you want to ask a question, click on Q&A at the bottom right, then tell us which speaker to address your question. If you are tuning in via Facebook, please post your queries in the comment section and we'll try to get to you. Audience questions will be asked at the end of the session. Um, Now for our first speaker, um, Robert, you could start your presentation.
Thanks, Robert. So I've just shared my screen now. Let me know if it comes through okay. All right. Well, look, thank you very much. It's really good to be here. So I suppose just so I could test that it's all working okay, if you can just type in the chat box, if you can see a photo of me, then we should be good to go. How's that looking?
Looks good.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, thanks so much. All right. So basically, Archistar's been around now for 10 years and we've had a really successful time to date. We've been for the last 2 years building our own software. For the first 8 years before that, we were an education and consulting company. And we're really proud that, in the last 2 years, we've been able to sign up a lot of the world's top organizations in terms of the property, real estate, and developer and agent space as well. So we've got a great client list, and I'd love to run you through kind of how the business started and what we've got now and where the business is going as well. So essentially, our business was founded by my brother, Dr. Ben Coorey. He's an architect, a parametric designer, and all-around tech guru. So he's a very unique skill set. And essentially, Ben's a registered architect. He's got a master's. He has a PhD. He does lecturing at a lot of global universities and also a consultant to a lot of big global firms. If you look at where our business started, it started off as Archistar Academy, which a lot of architecture firms and universities globally use. We've now got over 47,000 users in the platform. We've done over 1 million lessons and 35,000 exams. So we really started the business to essentially upskill the whole industry in terms of digital design. And that was the first 8 years of our business was running this part of the business. And then we ran an event a couple of years ago predicting the future of design. We called it Digital Design 2020. And essentially what we're looking to do there was to, kind of launch our new online platform where we developed a whole lot of software ourselves for the first time and bring it to market. So essentially our software is generative design software that's in the cloud and easy for anybody to use. So you don't need any skills in programming or scripting or anything like that. You can just simply use a web browser and you can choose a block of land that you want to develop on. And our system will generate building designs that are compliant with local government regulations. And we'll go into that in a bit more detail, but that's kind of where we started. So we started as a generative design system. And what happened was that we found that when we started showing people this generative design system, people said, look, it's really good that you're doing generative design. That's one piece of the puzzle. But there's actually a few other pieces of the puzzle that are really important as well. And we'd like just having generative design on its own island doesn't really help us. We need you to integrate with other data sets and with other processes so it becomes more valuable to our business. So what we found is that the entire ecosystem of property really comes down, like generative design can impact all those different target markets, which we didn't expect to start with. We thought that we would only be building tools for architects to use. But it turns out that a whole stack of different other markets were very interested in what we were doing. And if you take a look at this slide from Autodesk, it just shows how much building is actually going on every single day. So you've got like 13,000 buildings being built every day globally, which is huge. And it's going to be that every day predicted for the next 30 years. So it's incredible how much building actually happens on a day-to-day basis across the world. And most of it is the old school way. They just do things the same way they were doing it 20, 30 years ago. And then if you take a look at where the breakup of that is, like almost 25% of that is in China. and a lot of that's in Africa as well. So it's super interesting to see where all this building's happening. And we've done really well in our first market in Australia, but it's so interesting to see what's happening globally and how much opportunity is there. So we really like this this kind of diagram as showing you the design life cycle. So firstly, you start at that pre-design or concept stage, then you move to the design and development application stage, then you'll go through to design development, and then you'll go into that tender and construction stage. And so what Archistar is essentially about is shifting the curve from this traditional process where a little bit of work done up front, but most of it's done in this middle construction documentation stage, to a lot earlier. So shifting the curve backwards so that a lot more work is done in this pre-design and schematic design stage. And the reason is because the earlier that you do this heavy lifting, the less expensive it is to make changes and the easier it is to make changes. So that's why we're all about putting the tools in the hands of these early designers so that people can make designs a lot earlier, a lot more compliant, and get a much faster process and a lot less expensive process. So we do this using 4 different pieces of technology. We help developers and architects and real estate agents. We help them in 4 different ways. We help them find and assess development sites. We help them generate building designs. We help them analyze those sites for feasibility. And then we help them achieve compliance with government regulations. So this is Archistar, the new platform, and I'll show you exactly how we've built it. So what we've done, remember at the start how I spoke about how we've intersected a whole number of different industries. We've actually got a very large data team. So we've got 19 people in our data team, and they've spent time just in Australia mapping 266 million local planning rules into the platform. So we now have a very large database of every single planning rule you could think of in Australia, and we're also working on expanding this internationally as we speak. So essentially, we capture a whole lot of planning rules. A lot of these come from PDF documents that are hundreds, if not thousands of pages long, and we've put that into a nice, consistent national database, which has been a very big effort from our team's behalf. So now we have 95% of the population mapped on the platform, and we're getting very close to moving that to 100%. So we're very, very close there as well to getting full national coverage in Australia. And as we mentioned, we also are moving internationally very quickly as well. So the way that it works is you can click on any particular property around the country, and you get all this information that comes up on the left-hand side. So you can see, what's the building height, what's the floor area ratio, and a whole lot more information about that site as well. What's permitted, what's not permitted as well on that site. The next part is that we go and find off-market sites. So you can put in your criteria about what you're looking for in a development site, and our system will highlight in red all the sites that match your criteria, which is really powerful. The next thing that we do is an instant estimate. So on any block of land that you choose, we give you a very quick estimate as to how much sales you will make on there, how much profit you will make, and also how much you should pay for that land, the residual land value, to achieve your desired profit margin. So that's all one click out of the platform straight away. We also do visualizations. So on here, you're seeing some zoning visualization. So you can see that, on a national basis, we have all the zoning layered in. So you can see a beautiful color-coded zoning scheme that's very standardized. We also have heritage areas. So if there's an existing heritage building on a site, we show you that. We also show you flood zones. So you can see here if there's any flood impacted zones. In Australia, there's a lot of bushfire zones, so you have to be careful when you build in those zones, and we highlight them as well. We also show contours. So this is essentially very important because you can see the slope of the land. And then we also show the 3D contextual buildings. We show how the buildings intersect into what's there at the moment. So in Australia, we have some very powerful data partners who we work with. So we show all the different properties that are on the market currently, and we show what's for sale and what's for rent as dots on the map, plus also aggregated data sets. And then we give you very detailed integrations into what that property looks like as well at the moment. We also show this for houses, apartment, and for commercial property as well. So if it's an office, if it's a warehouse, if it's an industrial estate, we show that as well. We've also got here development application. So if there's an existing site, but a developer has already put a development application in, or they're in construction, we show you the status of where that's up to as well. And then we have a powerful add-on here with aerial imagery. So you get to see the latest aerial image, which is updated every quarter. So the really interesting part is the generative design. And so essentially this is showing when you click a land, we generate hundreds of designs in seconds that match the criteria of the local government rules. And this is all shown here in real time. So you can see here, there's a whole lot of different rules that are provided, and there's lots of different sites as well. So this is showing some subdivisions. This is showing some high-rise buildings. And we do have an export into CAD as well. So if you're using AutoCAD or Revit as BIM or Rhino, we can export into 2D or 3D models as well. So you can take a design from Archistar and then play with it in your preferred design tool of choice. We also do a lot of analytics. So what we do straight away is also develop something into a unit mix. And then so basically we turn the unit mix on. And then so you can see here the breakup between 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom apartments. And what we also do is a solar analysis. So we show you how much sunlight hits each of the apartments and how many hours of sunlight that each apartment gets. We do the same thing for other environmental factors like cross ventilation. So you can see here that all these ones that are in blue get fresh air all the way through the apartment, which is important in the Australian market. And all ones that are in grey are not ventilated, so they don't get fresh air all the way through the apartment. The next thing that we have is what we call a feasibility. So essentially on any of these designs that come up, you can get an instant feasibility to work out how much sales and costs and profit you would make on any one of those sites in real time as well. So we've got commercial buildings here. So we showed you some residential before. This is commercial. We also do hotels and we do mixed use. Over here, you're seeing some shadows. So basically you're seeing what the shadow analysis is. Again, this is all in real time from the system. And then building separation. So in Australia, there's rules about how close you can build to other buildings. So any apartments that are in red are actually in breach. So they're too close to the next building. So this wouldn't get approved. And then there's also car park design as well. So this is a really good overview of the system. I'll do a very short case study about finding a site here in Australia. So what we do first is we turn on the zoning overlays to see which sites are allowed for high density. And then we click on the townhouses tab. So we're trying to build a low density one or a medium density in this particular area. We then check if that particular site is developed. This is a good opportunity. And you can see there are two neighbors on either side are fully developed. So there's a great opportunity to build here. So as we click on this site, now we review the planning rules. We can see what the planning regulations are for the particular site. And we get into much more detail about what overlays and references are on the site as well. We then check comparable sales. So we can see that a neighboring property is selling for $340,000. And we can also see there's a development application and we can see how many units they're fitting into that particular land. So we know what the average unit size will be. So the great thing is now we know that about 200 square meters seems to be about the average lot size. They're quite small lots in a particular area. And then we can test out some designs. So we've got a design here. This is the Coorey design where it's a road down the middle and then there's properties on either side there. Now we can run a feasibility to see how much profit we'd make on this particular site. So we can see we have a residual land value here of $1.45 million. So to get a 20% margin, we could pay $1.45 million for this block of land and make it still profitable. We can then review the zoning to make sure that that's all fine, and yep, and we're good to go. So yeah, I could go into a lot more detail, but I know that we have a lot of presentations to get through today, and there's also some time for question and answer. So thanks so much, and I look forward to hearing any questions that come through.
Thanks, Robert, for the presentation. I really liked it. Especially, there were a few points that you made, like where you had many of the Australia planning rules codified into your system already, so that when you generate some design options, all of them will comply. So did you have any difficulties or any challenges to try to comb through these regulations and then try to computerize them in order for your program to understand it?
Yeah, it was a very big challenge. So we had to rebuild our database 4 times. So we built it once and we thought we solved it, and then we had to rebuild it again because the structure wasn't right. So we had to do that 4 times because in Australia, I'm not sure if it's the same in Singapore, but they're very complex in Australia, the planning regulations. So they might say, you know, this is the building height and these are the setbacks that you need to hit.
Yes.
Then if you are on a different, if you're facing this side of the road, then the setbacks change. And then the setback is, you know, for the first 4 levels that you got a certain setback, then for the next 4 levels, the setback goes lower,
Exactly.
then it goes lower. Yeah, so it's a very complex database structure that we had to build to be able to handle that.
I see, yeah. So in Singapore, we also have things like if you are near the public roads, you have to offset a certain distance. But if you are at a common boundary next to your neighbor, then you have to follow another set of tables. So
very,
we are
very similar, yeah.
It's the same, right?
Yeah.
So in Singapore, what we are trying to do is similar to yours, but instead of coming up with a design, we are trying to come up with a program that can check whether a proposed design has compliance or not. But I think the fundamentals of obeying the regulations are the same between yours and ours, right? So we also have some really deterministic guidelines, like if it's a road of this category 4, then the offset must be 15 meters. But then there are certain urban design elements that are quite subjective, and it's really challenging to computerize and codify them into a table, you know. So that's what we are facing now. Do you have any advice for us, or do you think that maybe it's something that should be taken into the next step of evaluation and should not be included in the conceptual stage for now?
Yeah, so we're all about human plus AI. So we never think that AI is going to completely remove any human elements. It's all about assisting in that process. So what we find is that a lot of architects and designers like to use our system at that very early concept stage. So they can put together, let's call it 5 or 10 designs that they like, and very, very quickly. And then what they'll do is pick 1 or 2 of those designs that they really like, and then export that into Revit or Rhino, and then take it from there. So, but they'll know that it's pretty close to being feasible. And you know, all of the quantitative measures are kind of catered for, but then there's qualitative measures. So in Australia, there's things like, you know, you need to fit in with the neighborhood context. You know, so all of those things would be impossible for a computer to do. So you need a local person to support it. So we're all about trying to support the local architects and make their job a bit easier, and remove a lot of the grunt work and the low value work, so they can focus on the really important work.
I'm just curious, in terms of how long does it take to build up that data set to be entered? Because in the context of Singapore, it is quite complex, but I think it's likewise similar to that of Australia. So in another layer there, aside from the urban planning and urban design aspect, is you're feeding some real estate data. So
yeah,
that's also something that's quite comprehensive here, because a lot of property is already quantified here, and basically costing as well. So in principle, how long would it take if we are to adopt such a thing here?
Yeah, so our team, it's taken us about 2 years to get to where we are now, and it's taken about, we estimate about 100,000 person hours to collate all the zoning planning rules for the Australian market. In saying that, we've made, because we're doing it for the first time and we had to rebuild the database 4 times, you know, it was, we got a lot of learnings. So we would expect that to be significantly shorter the second time that we did it in an international market. So we've done some testing in the US and the UK, and we would significantly shorten that time, because I think with anything that you do in life, like you make a lot of mistakes the first time you do something, then you get more experience and you learn from that. And so we've made all those mistakes, which is good. So yeah, we could share some of those learnings. Yeah.
You have already a data structure that you can depend on, like a framework. So you just build onto the proven framework, right?
That's the thing, yeah, because like you said, like the rules are so complex that you do need, the database needs to be flexible enough that it can handle all those edge cases, because you think that you've solved it, and then there's someone who comes up with this new rule that you've never seen before, and the previous structure can't handle it. So it is it's really important to get that framework right at the start so that it can be flexible enough to handle all the complexities that come through.
Okay, thanks. One more question, if there's time. So I noticed that your platform aggregates all the data so that it can churn and produce things like profitability and cost, right? But in Singapore, I feel that some of the platforms are quite segregated. So we in the private developer network, we have a few platforms, and then on the government side of things, we also have a platform that we rely on. But these two don't really start to talk to each other. So to have a product like yours may not be feasible now. So do you have any recommendations on how we can start to aggregate these two data together?
Yeah, so it's about having a common platform and basically an agreed standards between the public and the private sector.
Yeah.
And so again, it's taken us 2 years to get the public and private sector to start talking to each other.
Okay.
Again, the solution's quite simple and quite elegant, but it's more the politics and
Yes.
yeah, and getting the people together. So I think it's not really the technical challenge isn't there. The technical challenge can be easily solved. It's more about just having the right stakeholders in the room and all talking to each other so that it could be effective.
I see. So I guess there must be a mutual trust between the private and public sector.
Yeah, totally. And then it takes a bit of work because, like in Australia, the public sector is very slow. So, the private sector really wants things to speed up, and the public sector, they still do want things to speed up, but they just have more processes and more bureaucracy to get through. So it's so the main effort is getting the public sector on board. That's the hard part, because I think the private sector would do anything to make things faster. So they're always really keen to make it faster, and it's the public sector that's the most important to get on board.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Thank you for your very honest
thank you very
feedback and
much.
advice. So
Yeah,
now for
thank you.
our second speaker, a long-time buddy of mine, Johan. We've met way back in Portugal in one of the first few RTC's Rapid Tech Conference. So Johan,
yes,
please.
Been a while since we met. So yeah, thank you everyone for inviting me today. I'm going to be talking a bit about Archio, and we're going to try something new for that. Like I want to talk about Archio well-being in Archio. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to be seeing not only my Zoom meeting, but the actual Archio software. So I'm going to put on a